Hello, Captain. The meeting is live. Hello, Captain. The meeting is live. Okay. Okay. Please, if you guys can hear me, I would like you to signify. I would like to see signals. Thank you. If you guys can see my screen as well, please can you indicate? Okay. Please check if you can see my screen. That's nice. Good afternoon, everybody. How was our day? I hope the Sunday is being fruitful. Anyway, today's class is going to be more interesting because I would expect more questions. But I want to apologize for last class. I would have sent us the recording, but if you could remember, there was a time we have a glitch. We have a network glitch. So unbeknownst to me, the network went off. So the recording stopped. Because of that, I lost the recording of the last class. It was super painful to me because it is one of the most amazing recording I've ever done. As in the creativity behind the lecture, the messages, it has gone beyond the average of what I do with students. I pray today's own will yield more fruit. So I want to apologize. However, there's a similar recording of that day that I've done in the past. I would forward that to us. We'll use that as a backup. But while waiting for that, I will do the needful, record it, and make sure it is ready. Okay, I think I got a message here. Can we spend 30 minutes to reproduce last class? Okay, I think I buy that idea. Do any other person think we should redo the last class? However, I'm actually waiting for questions. I'm expecting students to ask questions. That will serve as an avenue for me to retouch it. So if anybody have a question, I would like to hear them before we commence to this class. Any question, anybody? Maybe you're trying to practice, you're trying to go through it, and you're having issues. Please, this is the right time for you to put in your own interest. I'm waiting for the questions, please. Questions. Mr. Daniel, Captain Sadina, Ifeanyi, we are waiting for other students. Abiola, Mr. Matthew, Ifeanyi, and other students. Please, can I hear your questions? Were you able to practice what we did in the last class? Any omission, any addition, any problem you encounter, Can you bring them up so that I can treat them? Or do we buy the idea that I overgo the last class for the next 30 minutes? If you buy the idea, can you just wait? I'm waiting for a response. Are we guys there? Or I'm just the only one here? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Please. So should I go over the class one more time? The introduction to HTML. Should I go over it again? It's just a suggestion. Don't worry, all of this part will be cut out before being sent to you.
Yeah, that's fine. That's okay.
Okay. So I would go over it like a crash course. So I'm going to do a crash course on it. I won't focus more on it. So let's buckle our shirts, let's buckle our trousers, and let it start. Good day, everybody. Regardless of where you're calling from, where you're connecting. Today I'm going to introduce you, or should I say really introduce you to HTML and web page structure. Now, from the last class, I made it known to students that HTML is the building block of a website. Consider yourself as a construction engineer and you want to build a house. You want to build a house.
Are you recording this already?
Yes, it's recorded. It's recorded. Now, so consider yourself as a civil engineer that repairs or builds a building that's into construction of a house. So let's call you a developer, real estate developer. Whether you like it or not, in order for you to build a building, you will need bricks. In web development, the bricks we use to build a website is what we call HTML. HTML is the building block of a website. It's a web page structure. Now, what is HTML? HTML is a markup language that defines the structure of a web document. Web document refers to web pages. That's the one we're talking about in particular. HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language. The full meaning of HTML, Hypertext Markup Language. You can also refer to it as a formatted text markup language, but it is actually hypertext. HTML consists of series of elements, which we are going to dive into, which you use to enclose or wrap different parts of a content to make it appear a certain way or act a certain way. The enclosing tag can make a word or an image hyperlinked to somewhere else, can italize words, can make your font bigger or smaller, and so on. Now, for those of us who have made use of a word processing application like Microsoft Word, WPS Documents, or Google Docs, and many others, if you notice, we make use of this document, this word processing app, to build documents that can be typed or printed. If you want to do similar things, and if you notice, these softwares has this thing that you can use to format your text, to make some bold, to make some italic, so make some title, subtitle, heading, smaller heading, large heading. All of this is made possible through HTML. That is, if you want to replicate similar thing for a website, we make use of HTML to do these designs, to make a text bigger, a title, a paragraph, a subtitle, an heading, a subheading, a superscript, a subscript. That's when you're doing raised to the power, base, all of those type of things. We make use of HTML to do them. Now, each HTML tag describes different document content. That means to every HTML tag that exists, they define different things you can do on a web document. Now, let's take an example of an HTML document. Let's look at this. This is an HTML document. This is a basic HTML document. Now, if you run this through an editor and present it on the browser, this would be your outcome. Meaning, this is the result you will get. Now, how does all of this thing we write here, how does it translate to the one you're seeing on your left, on your right rather? How do they translate? Now let's break down the tags. The first thing you see there is what we call the doc type declaration. When you see the less than sign, then you see an exclamation mark, doc type HTML. Now this doc type declaration is telling your browser that the document you are about to read or the document you are about to present to a user is an HTML document. Treat it as an HTML document. So that's why the doc type declaration is there. Because there are various versions of HTML documents. So for the browser to know what type of HTML document it is to interpret, that's why the doc type declaration is important. The next thing we have is your HTML tags, the opening tag and the closing tag. Now this is an indication to say, okay, I've told you that I'm about to create an HTML document. The HTML document will start here and my HTML document will end here. Meaning whatsoever you see between this HTML document should be treated as an HTML document. Next is your head section. Just like a letter, when you're writing a formal letter or any letter, a letter has basically 3 sections: the head, the body, and the salutation. The head of a letter is just to tell you who the letter is coming from, where the letter is going to, and the title of the letter. It does not necessarily communicate the content of the letter. That's what you put in the heading. Now the content of the letter is considered as the body of the letter, while your salutation is at the bottom. However, on HTML, we don't have the salutation part. We only have the head section and the body section. So the text between the body, the head section rather, provide information about the HTML document you're about to create, like your metadata and title. So something like your title goes within the head section to show an indication like that this is an heading, this is the title of the document. Now the next thing you see is the body. The body is the visible part or the visible page that the user are expected to interact with. The section of your web page that the user is expected to interact with, as stated within the body section. Then we now have our tags, like our H1 tag, our paragraph. These are the content. These now determine the content that displays, different contents that displays in the body of your document. Let's move ahead. What's an HTML tag? Let's even break down the HTML tag because we keep mentioning HTML tag. So what's an HTML tag? HTML tags are keywords, that is tag names, surrounded by angle brackets. They have less than, greater than, text in between. So what you are seeing here is an HTML tag, and this is also an HTML tag. Now HTML tag normally comes in pairs like this. In a browser, your HTML tag will not display, but the browser makes use of the HTML tag to determine how to display the content, that is whatsoever goes in between. So the tag defines how these contents are to be displayed. Now the first tag in a pair is the start tag, and the second tag is known as the end tag. The end tag is written like the start tag, but with a slash before the tag name. Can you see? That is how we denote the difference between an opening a start tag and a closing tag. The start tag is often referred to as the opening tag, while the end tag is often called the closing tag. Let's move ahead. Now, tools used in creating and displaying HTML file. What are the tools we can use to create or display an HTML tag? We have two. We have what we call the code editors, and we have what we call the web browser. Do anybody have any question regarding what we've done so far that they would like me to treat? Any question, guys? Questions?
Yes, sir. Go ahead, sir.
Okay. No question. Thank you. Now let's talk about the code editor. What's a code editor? Code editor are computer programs or applications used in creating and editing a programming file and document. Meaning, if you want to create or edit, make changes to a programming file, regardless of the programming language, we make use of a code editor. There are basically two types of code editor, and they are the plain text editors and your IDEs, which stand for integrated development environments. Your IDEs are another form of text editors. Now let's break them down one after the other. Plain text editor. These are editors that edit plain text. Most of these plain text editors are embedded in an operating system installed in a computer. Meaning, This type of editor do not require you to install a software. They automatically come with your operating system. Example of this plain text editor is Notepad. Whenever you install a Windows operating system, Notepad automatically comes with it. Another is what we call text edit. And lastly, we have the one called TextMate. All of these editors I just listed, they are embedded in different operating systems, like your Windows operating system, your Linux operating system, and your Macintosh operating system. Now let's talk about IDEs. Integrated Development Environment. These are editors that has graphical user interface, that is GUI, which enables users, that is programmers, to reduce coding, has built-in automation tools, and help to debug easily. This editor helps you in debugging easily because they are embedded, they have graphical user interface. They are the ones you have to now download and install. Example of these editors are Microsoft Visual Studio Code, Sublime Text, PyCharm, Android Studio, Adobe Dreamweavers, and many others. We have a whole lot of them. Now, for the course of this training, we'll be making use of Visual Studio Code, and that's why I introduce you to it. If you come down here and type VSC on your browser, it will take you to a website, or your Google search engine will bring this web address called codevisualstudio.com. This codevisualstudio.com is where you can download your Visual Studio, the one we are going to be using for this training, and it is free of charge. Now, it's not compulsory you use this. Like I stated in the slide, there are other editors. We have other editors like Sublime Text, Adobe Dreamweavers, and many others. Depending on the one you want or the one you prefer, but the most used code editors globally is Visual Studio Code. So you can click on it in order for you to download it. Regardless of the operating system you're using, you can download Visual Studio Code either for Windows or for Macintosh or for Linux operating system, and it is free of charge. We also have an online editor that you can use as a developer if you don't want to install, or the device you are using is not capable of doing what we want it to do. There's this one called Repit, repu.it. Repu.it is an online editor that you can use to write code. It's called Repit. You can sign in on them and create your app without the need of installing any software. Just that it requires you to have 247 data as in internet connectivity for you to be able to use it. If I decide to log in now to show you guys my account, it's an online editor. It's loading up. While waiting for it to complete, there's another one which is called code space. That's Visual Studio Code Space. Visual Studio Code Space. That one too exists. But that one requires you to have a GitHub account. So if I continue with Google, so that I can log into my repo.it. I'm trying to log into my repeat.com. So this is suitable for people who their device is not compatible with an editor. They can make use of this. I'm waiting for it to complete. So this is it. I can say create repo. I can choose a template, import from GitHub, or just select name repeat. Create an repo agent, like you're creating a project.
Hello, Mr. Ariman.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, while waiting for this, can I ask a question, please?
Yes.
Yeah, I would like to ask, do we have like a timetable for the topics covered during this training?
Yes.
I mean, the whole of the training. Do we have like
yes.
the timetable
I
for
forward
it?
it to all students. Didn't
Okay.
you get yours?
No, I didn't get that.
Please remind me after this class. I will forward it to every student. There's a timetable
Okay, thank you, sir.
for it. There's this that's
Okay.
a roll-up of all the things you are going to do.
Okay.
So
Are we also considering the AI as well in this training?
Are we considering
Are
what?
we doing something on AI?
Yes.
Are we doing something on AI?
Yes. How to integrate AI in writing your code? Yes, I will show you that too. How to use AI to simplify code creation?
Okay.
So these Replit,
Okay.
they have free version and premium version.
Yeah, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Yes.
I believe it is VS Code dev. That's the online Visual Studio Code. It should be VS Code.dev. So Repit has a free version and a paid version, whereby you have to be paying monthly to use it. But this, if you go to vscode.dev, you will see an online Visual Studio Code that you can use to write code and save online. This is free to use. It's loading up. So it is also an online editor with a graphical user interface embedded with it. I don't know why it's taking forever to load. So let me continue. So if I move forward, now when you write a code using any of the editor, whether a plain text or an IDE. You stated in the examples above, those codes can be written using any editor, either plain text or IDE. To differentiate the type of program you are writing, you have to save the file with an extension of .html or .htm for an HTML file. Otherwise, it will be saved and treated as the default extension of the editor, which might not be visible via the web browser. Meaning, when you're writing code, you need to know what extension that code, that programming language you're writing is. Otherwise, your code will not run. Meaning, if I come here to my personal Visual Studio Code, so it's loading up. Let me open this project and I come here. You can see this file has first.html in front of it, and it also has first.txt. Lastly, it also has something called second.html. Now, this is why if you do not save your file properly with a .html, it will not be treated as a .html file. So when you are saving your project, you must be very conscious of the extension you use. Otherwise, your code might not run. So for an HTML file, you must save with .htm or .html. Now let's proceed. Now, example of extensions, you can see the way we name our file: index.html, contactus.html, aboutus.html, login.html, and what have you. Please, it's not a good practice if you're saving your file and if it has two names, it's either you combine it or you separate it with an underscore. Otherwise, giving it a space to name your file is not a good practice. Now let's talk about web browser. I said earlier, the purpose of a web browser is to read web documents, web resources like HTML, and display them. That's just their job. The job of a web browser is to read and display. So the web browser do not display the HTML tag, meaning by the time it is showing the content, it does not show the tag. It only uses the tag to determine how to display the document. An example of browsers are Internet Explorer, Google Chrome, Mozilla Firefox, Safari, Opera Mini, and what have you. Now for this training, I'll be using Chrome. That doesn't mean you can't use every other browser. However, every browser reads each HTML content or a tag and HTML elements differently. So it's a good practice as a developer if you have multiple browsers installed, so you can test across multiple browsers how your web page will look like, because each and every one of them interprets these pages differently. Now let's get to today's class, Introduction to CSS. Do anybody have any question regarding what we did? Good. Captain Sadina, can I hear you?
So why is the popular choice for Chrome, given the security exposures associated with Chrome? Why not Safari?
Okay. Study shows that the number of people who use Chrome to browse daily is more than the number of people who use Safari. However, as a developer, you need to consider your audience choice, not your preference. You need to consider what is that thing people use mostly. Although we all know it is part of the Google's monopoly, but when you're building any project, you need to build that project putting your audience in mind, sitting where your audience would have sat to determine what to use and what type of content to expect. So truly, Chrome might have some loopholes. However, study shows it is the most used, and to prove it, just go to Google Trend. There's something called Google Trend. Please let me close the things I'm not using. We call it Google Trend. Explore what the word is searching for right now. So I want to say most. Browser. Let me just type the word browser. Topic, web browser. So let's see what are the conversation on web browser. So this is based on the word web browser. Now let's compare, let's do comparison. Google Chrome, let's say Opera Mini. I want to compare it with Google Chrome. I also want to compare it with Safari. So we'll see which one people use mostly. Safari web browser. And you can list anyone. So if you compare this, now if you check your Google Trend, now this is just in Nigeria alone. This is the data of Nigeria alone. You will notice that the red one, which is Google Chrome, is the most used. As at January 26, 5:53 a.m. If you go down, can you see them? This is 316. Now let's check globally. Let's check for global usage worldwide. When I say worldwide, can you see globally the one in the middle, which is Google Chrome, has a point of 84%, while Safari has 16% and Opera Mini has 2%. It is the most used globally. So Captain, are you getting my message now? So if you are building a project, and if you see, if you scroll down, look at the world map of where it is mostly used. This is the world map of where it is mostly used. You will notice.
Yeah, I just posted something I researched. I think it's worldwide is 68.38% dominance for Google Chrome, and the next one, which is distant, far distant from it, is 17.09 Safari.
Yeah, can you see?
Yeah, Microsoft Edge 4.92, Firefox 2.46. Right.
So all of these
So
things is what we consider to determine what we are to use, because we cannot be building something for some set of audience and those audience do not use it. Are you getting it? So that's the main idea why I will always advise a developer. It's good to have multiple browser on your system as a developer so that you can capture every possible angles. But it is always advised you use the one people use mostly. Did I answer your question, sir?
Thank you very much.
You're
You have
welcome.
convinced me beyond reasonable doubt.
Thank you very much. Any other question before I move on? Do anybody have any other question? Hope I've been able to convince you, not confuse you. Everybody. Okay. Let's move into CSS. So what's CSS? CSS is basically introduction to CSS, web page styling. CSS is used to style a web page, meaning we use it to beautify a web page. When it comes to beautifying the web page, who we turn to is CSS. Now, what's the difference between HTML and CSS? HTML is the building block, while CSS is the styling, meaning consider you also as a construction engineer. If you want to build a house, you make use of blocks. But if you want to beautify it by painting it, you buy paint for beauty. You buy flowers for decorations. So the beauty of a website comes with CSS, while providing the content of the website comes with HTML. So what is CSS? CSS is a style sheet language. Remember, we said HTML is a markup language. CSS is a style sheet language that describes the presentation and styling of an HTML document. That means it is used to determine how an HTML document will look like in terms of beauty and presentation. It is CSS that determines that. The word CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheets. Cascading Style Sheets. CSS describes how HTML documents or HTML elements are to be displayed on screen, paper, or in other devices. I want to throw these questions to us. Have we ever come across a situation whereby the way a certain website look on a mobile app is different from the way that same website look on a laptop? Have we ever come across it? Anybody here? You view a peculiar website. The way that website look on a mobile phone is different from the way the website look on a laptop or on a tablet. Anybody, just wave if you have experienced it, that the looks are different. Good. Any other person? Okay, Mr. Matthew. That's nice. Okay. Now, what we use to determine these differences, what we use to determine the differences in display is CSS. CSS helps us to design our website to look differently, differently depending on the type of device the person is using. CSS is what is responsible. Now, CSS saves a lot of work. It can control the layout of a multiple web page all at once, meaning you can have only one CSS style and different web page will look alike. Now, let's take an example and we will test this in reality. Let's take this code for example. If we style it with this is the outcome we will have. So let's do it. I will come to my web page, to my editor, and I will create a new project. So let's create a new project that we will work with. Let's say, okay, let's say I come here, I create a file, or inside here itself, instead of creating a separate file, inside here I will create a file and I will name it index.html. Now, who can tell me why am I naming this file .html? Can somebody just tell me, or drop a chat, or unmute yourself and tell me why I'm naming this file index.html? Anybody? Anybody? Please, I need this class to be interactive. I need an interactive class. I don't want it to be just me. Who can tell us why am I naming it index.html? Why do I have to put .html? Anybody, please? Anybody? You can drop it as a chat.
Hello, can I come in, please?
Yes, you can.
Because you want the web browser to display it as an HTML file.
Exactly. I want it to be visible by my browser. That's why I am saving it with .html. If I do not, my browser will not be able to read that file. Please. Thank you very much, Mr. Daniel. Let me throw you some flowers and claps. Thank you. So let's start writing the HTML document itself. Now I want to write it to match what we have. So let me rewrite this code we are seeing here. I will come to this place, they wrote page title, and I will say page title. And I will come to the body section here. I will say div. The div, I will give it an attribute called class. And I will call the class nav. Then in between here, I will write an A tag. The A tag has no destination for now. I will just say O. Then in front of it, I'll put a pipe or a vertical line. I duplicate these 3 times. I'll change this home to about, and I'll change this one to blog. Then I'll come down here. I will say H1, my first heading. Then I will come here and say P for paragraph, and I will say my paragraph. Then I can come down here and say div again. For speed work, I will say hash footer for me to speed up my process, which I will still show you how to do. I will come here and say $copy exclamation. This is an HTML encoding scheme. I will explain that later. And I will say run cloud technologies. I will say ampersand trade exclamation. Then I will come down here and I will say A tag contacts us. I will say contact us. Hope you guys can hear me. Now, if I come here, I want to run this page. Now, I want it to be visible by a web browser. I can just come here, go to the word run, and click on start debug. Here it will ask me, what do I want to use to display it? As for me, I want to use a web page Chrome. I want to use my Chrome. If your own is Edge, you can select Edge. So I will select Chrome here. Once I select Chrome, I await it to finish uploading. Now this is the outcome of the web page. Can you see? This is the outcome with plain HTML. No CSS attached, just HTML. I can then come down here to put my CSS. You can see the file name is style.css. So I will come here, I will create a file. I will call it style.css for a CSS file. Then I will come into it here. I will write my CSS style. So in order for me to write, I will have to link it here. So I can come here and I'll type link CSS style.css. Then I'll write my CSS. Let's I say H1 color blue, texts align right with a semicolon at the end, border 1px dashed. I can come down here and say dot nav background color, I want it to be yellow. Merging, I want it to be 10 pixels across. Then I also want a footer. So I will say hash footer. In the footer, we have a file called A, which is the anchor tag. I want the border. I know for now you will not understand fully all of this. Don't worry, I will explain. I'll say 2x solid black. Mr. Raymond has started writing jargons. Don't worry, you will get to understand. Then I will say text decoration none. I will say padding 5px. Lastly, I will say border dash radius another 5px. Now if I decide to display this on the browser, so we'll see the changes. If I reload this browser here, can you see it is same to what I have here? My outcome display is the same to what I have here because it is the same code. Now the style changed because of the CSS. It is CSS we use to add beauty, layout, positioning, presentation to our HTML code, and that is what you're seeing here. So let's move ahead. Let's break them down. In CSS, the word before the curly braces, like this your h1 dot nav, hash footer greater than a, are known as selectors, which refer to the element in an HTML file or document. They refer to an HTML file and a tag like this one here. If I come here, you will see we have tags h1, a tag, id. So we call these things selectors. because it is what we use to capture a certain element in our HTML document. You're telling your browser that the HTML document this style.css is attached to, go and capture h1 and give it all of this styling. So everything between the curly braces from year to year, from year to year, from year to year are known as CSS declaration, which refer to the effects that are expected to take place on what was selected. Now, you can see that each selector, each declaration has two parts. The first part is known as the property. The second part are known as values. Property, value. Property, value. Property, values. Property, value. Now, the one before the colon of each colon is the property. The one after it is known as the value, which is the effect to be taking place on the property. That's why you're having property and values. Now, the selector points to the HTML element you want to style. I've addressed that. Each declaration, which is the properties and value declaration you did, if you notice something, it ends with a semicolon. Now, what is the importance of this semicolon? The semicolon is an indication telling the browser that, okay, this property I select, I have done this declaration and I am done with the declaration. Because each property can have multiple value. If you notice, look at this border here or this border here. You can see that it has 3 values. So for your browser to be able to know that, okay, you are done with this declaration, you want to do another declaration, we end it with a what? A semicolon. Meanwhile, we separate the value and the property with a what? A colon, double colon. So that is how we differentiate between multiple declaration and the properties and value. Do anybody have any question? Anybody with any question, please? Okay.
Please help us. Please explain how Bootstrap will help us understand all these HTML languages.
Okay. Bootstrap is actually a library, although they call it a framework. If you go to the website, you see framework, CSS framework. It's actually a library that helps you. Instead of writing your CSS yourself, they've already written it. You are just using it. Are you getting me? We will do that in this training. Instead of you writing it yourself, they've written it for you. You are just using it. That's the power of CSS, of Bootstrap. Okay, Mr. Matthew, can I hear you? Captain Steve, do you get that?
Yes, because
Yeah.
while you are writing what you did just now, I was completely lost. But I know that Bootstrap is the way to go with writing these things.
Yes, but there's a problem. If you're a Bootstrap user and you don't understand the fundamentals of CSS, believe me, you won't know what to do. So as a beginner, it's a good idea to start with understanding the fundamental of that particular thing, so that if that thing gives you an error, you will know what caused the error. It's just like a software developer that uses AI to write code. Your AI might work, but it will get to a point that your AI might generate the wrong code. How will you know if it is wrong if you don't understand the fundamentals of that language you copied? So what I'm doing now is to break down the basics so you understand the fundamentals first, before you now dive into using something that will make life easy for you. The purpose of this training is for you to understand the basic. Actually, we will use Bootstrap, we will use Tailwind, we will use RTD. These are different frameworks and libraries you can use to build a website. We will use them. But for now, I need you to understand the fundamental of CSS. Mr. Matthew, your question.
Yeah, I can see in the coding, you didn't explain the hash footer, commenting it out. I need you to explain that,
Yes.
please.
Now, this is just a preamble of CSS. We'll still get into CSS on its own. We'll still get into HTML on its own as well. This is just like scraping the surface for you first. So to see how the outcome can be. There is a class I will book privately that we will do just to learn CSS alone. But to answer the question you asked, that hash is an indication of an ID, which is an attribute. You will not understand. That period, the full stop you put before the nav, is also an indication as well, which you might not understand for now. We will get into details later. Did I answer your question?
Okay, sir.
Captain Steve,
Yes, sir.
did
Thank
I
you
answer
very
your
much.
question?
Yes, you did. Thanks.
You're welcome. Now, you can see now we're now moving into the building block of web. The building block of web. This is where you will now learn HTML on its own. That will be in our next class, where you will learn HTML alone, understand all of the little things, what each character means and how they can be interpreted. But before we go into that, I want us all to start asking questions so that we can round up today's class on what I've said so far. More questions, please. Questions? It's time for Q&A. 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 I would like to hear questions and also show you differences. Now watch this. Let me expand this. Let me make a little bit of change. Let's say this one, and I say the background should be blue, or the nav bar. Can you see we capture a nav bar here? You say the background color should be yellow. I can change this color now to green. If I say green here and I refresh, you can see the background change to green. I can also come here and say, okay, I want it to have a padding. All of this will get into them. Padding of 20px across. If I refresh, can you see? Let's put the background color to yellow back. If I refresh, can you see? I can make changes across multiple sections. You can see this one is to the right. I can return it back to the left, which is the default. I can say go to the left. If I refresh, can you see? And I can also say center so that it will be in the middle. If I refresh, can you see it? And I can also change the borderline. Let's say I increase it to from 1 pixel to 2 pixels. If I refresh, can you see it's becoming thicker? Or I say I don't want it to be 2 pixels, I want it to be 5 pixels. If I refresh, can you see it's getting thicker? Or I don't want it to be dashed, I want it to be solid. If I refresh, can you see how thick it is? No space. No space there. So Daniel, what's your question? Daniel, what's your question? You can unmute. Okay.
I don't have any question. I
No.
didn't flag the hand.
There's another Daniel that raised his hand just now.
Oh, okay.
So we have multiple Daniel. Okay, we have Daniel A, Daniel B, G. That's why there's a confusion. So Daniel
The name
Guarino.
is Raymond.
Okay, Mr. Matthew.
I think where I always get confused most times is sometimes they do the styling on, let's say, like index.html. They do the styling
Directly
there,
inside
and directly inside, and now we created another
file.
style.css to
Yes.
do our
Yes.
styling and all.
Yes.
So that's where I'm always getting confused. You understand?
Okay.
Doing it outside and doing it, you understand,
Okay.
within
There are three
the
type of,
page.
when we get to
Yeah.
CSS properly, this is just a preamble, just to showcase. When we get to CSS properly, I will show you the three type of CSS we have. Actually, there are 4, but it is only 3 you can adjust. We have what we call the inline CSS, the internal CSS, and the external CSS. Meanwhile, the fourth one is what we call browser default, meaning every browser by default has a way it has stationed an element. We'll talk about that for now. Any other question? More questions, please. Questions. I can see Danny Guari raised his hand previously. Captain Steve, do you have any question?
Yeah, not right now. Thanks.
No. So I don't want to stress our brain too much. That's why I cut this. I've sectioned it down already. Remember, this training will go for 5 months. I want it to be
Excuse
short.
me, sir.
Okay. That's
Sir, I want to believe that those language you were inserting in this file that you created, the index and the CSS, I want to believe they are coding language.
yes.
Or are we supposed to know
Yes.
them?
Yes, but there are different type of programming languages. There are different type of languages. Like I said, CSS is a style sheet language. Meanwhile, HTML is a markup language. You can see the difference. We have different type of languages. Do you understand me now?
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. Questions? Any other question? So this is how we write a style sheet language, and this is how we write an HTML language. All of this will be explained, what they are and why do they exist. All of this and what these things signify. This is an HTML entity. It has a significance. It has what it means. It has what it represents. So I would like to hear more questions from us. Okay. If there is no question, I'll call today a day, which means we have more hours to spend in our next class. Maybe our next class will take up to 2 hours. Maybe not. So today's class, we were unable to take much of our time. I was able to crash everything down to just one day, and this is beautiful. It shows our commitment. Now, do any of us have difficulties installing any of the softwares I've mentioned? They would like me to go through it. Let's do it now. Anybody? I want to install my Visual Studio Code. I want to install my browser. I cannot, or my system is not compatible. I need. Can you come up? Okay. With none of that being answered, I will consider this class to be over for now. Today's own was recorded. and once I'm done processing it, doing the needful, the link will be sent for you. However, I want you guys to go to the Google Classroom. By the end of today, an assessment will be sent to you, and I will be expecting a reply from you. So the assessment is to check you and build your knowledge base. Thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of your day. Bye for now. Bye, guys.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye, thank you.